It's a real privilege and pleasure to be here together in Congress, and this is being broadcast through various channels, and I think there are many people in Korea especially who are keenly watching what we are doing here. I believe that in the crisis going on in the Korean Peninsula, that we are reaching a key turning point with respect to what is going on. You may have noticed just hours before meeting with Lee Jae-myung, President Trump had called out in Truth Social, "What is going on in South Korea?" All capital letters, as President Trump is wont to do. It looks like there is a purge or revolution. We cannot do business with that. This was a clarion call that indicates that President Trump, the most powerful man in the world, with the most difficult job in the world as President of the United States, is recognizing that there has been a revolution and purge in South Korea. What does this look like? The revolution is because there has been the death of democracy. What has happened is that due to election fraud, and this is part of a larger phenomenon of election fraud going on around the world, due to election fraud, democracy has died in South Korea. When President Yoon took the risk of declaring martial law in order to investigate this election fraud, he was unfairly and illegally impeached, even though he has the authority to declare martial law under Article 77 of the South Korean Constitution, and then was illegally removed from office by the Constitutional Court, illegally thrown in jail, and he's again been thrown in jail again. Double jeopardy, that's a violation of double jeopardy, to put him in jail and then put him in jail again. And then there was an emergency snap election in which there was an unprecedented amount of election cheating that took place to put Lee Jae-myung into the president's seat. This is a revolution. This is a coup d'etat. This is something that the US, according to US law, merits economic sanctions. And President Trump saw this revolution, and what was the purge part? The Lee Jae-myung administration is going after the best leaders, the most heroic leaders, those who are standing up for their country, those who are fighting for democracy, truth, and justice. The Lee Jae-myung administration is seeking to purge. He says he wants to end the insurrectionists. Even though he is the insurrectionist, he's saying, I want to end 1,200 insurrectionists. If you look at a website, ColonelYoon.com, you have about 800 people who are featured on there, and those are some of the most heroic, noble, wonderful leaders, especially in South Korea, who are fighting this fight as we speak. And he's trying to purge them. Churches are being raided, as President Trump has called out. The Osan Joint Air Base has been raided. Even the Command and Control Center, where there's radar data about everything that is flying around the Korean Peninsula, that was invaded in violation of the Status of Forces Agreement, where there must be notice and permission given by the US government. There was no notice and there was no permission, and it was illegally raided by the special prosecutor, who I think President Trump was alluding to when he said deranged Jack Smith, the prosecutor who had prosecuted President Trump. The parallels actually between what the US has experienced in the fraudulent 2020 election and what South Korea has been experiencing has been remarkable. There have been all sorts of parallels that have been going on here. And so there has been a revolution, there has been a purge, and it is high time for more and more people, especially in America, to wake up and to realize that it's happening. The good news is there are many more voices that are springing up among American leadership that are recognizing and realizing that we are in danger of potentially losing our best ally in the world, South Korea, to a communist revolution and purge leading to a communist dictatorship. That is the time in which we live. Communist doctrine says that you have a long march through the institutions. And that has been happening in South Korea, whether in the educational system, whether in the media, whether in the trade unions, whether in every branch of the South Korean government, in all the different areas and institutions that are the main levers of power and influence in South Korea. There has been a long march through the institutions, and now we are in the final stage. Is South Korea going to become a communist dictatorship, or will it be able to remain the best ally that the United States has in the world? Not to mention that most critical of regions, Northeast Asia. That is the time that we have reached. That is the level of the crisis where we have the culmination of the long march through the institutions. And is South Korea going to fall to communism or not? I am thankful for many other voices that are starting to rise up here from American leadership. Former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich has, right after the meeting with President Trump and Lee Jae-myung, was calling out this crisis in South Korea. We are very thankful for his voice that is calling this out. Or whether you talk about Ambassador Carlos Sands, who was Trump's ambassador to Denmark during the first administration, whether you're talking about Gordon Chang, whether you're talking about Trump's first national security advisor, Michael Flynn, whether you're talking about Steve Bannon, whether you're talking about Laura Loomer, whether you're talking about Barbara Marcois, who will also be speaking on a panel with us on Thursday. There are more and more American voices and leaders and influencers here in the United States who are realizing what is going on, who are calling it out, and waking up a previously sleeping giant known as the United States of America. There would be no South Korea other than the United States. If the US-led UN coalition did not intervene in the Korean War, you would have one full peninsula of darkness, where it would be North Korea all the way down. And yet, who would have imagined that we would be in this crisis where you have the communization of South Korea going on and a potential attempt to have a unified communist peninsula from South Korea? Who could have imagined this? And the reason why a lot of people have trouble imagining this is because the vast majority of Koreans, people, don't want that. Like 90% of Koreans consider the US to be the best ally. Around 80% of Koreans are against the Chinese Communist Party. And yet with the infiltration from North Korea, the infiltration from the Chinese Communist Party, where they're trying to overwhelm South Korea, and with an administration right now in South Korea that's opening all the windows and doors to the CCP and to North Korea, we have a crisis of historic proportions right now in South Korea. And we're privileged to have a wonderful panel of people to address this. People who I honor and respect, because the ones in South Korea, they're risking a lot to do the work that they've been doing. because there is a purge going on. And the first person that I will introduce to you that we are honored and privileged to have is Prime Minister and former acting President Huang, who has also been one of the key leaders in fighting against election fraud that is being performed by the National Election Commission, internationally through AWEB, which has 109 member states. He has led this election justice army that has been monitoring elections. He is such an important influence and voice. We wonder whether he will become the president of a unified Korea someday in the future. It is our great privilege and honor to welcome Prime Minister Huang, our keynote speaker for this panel.